We don't need it, because we get this. John Calvin said wisely that we always have to keep the Word and the Spirit together. Where one is functioning without a sense of the other, there will be some kind of extremism or some unhealthiness. If we love the Bible so much, we turn it into a textbook, we beat people on the head with it, but where is the sense of contrition and of brokenness over sin and of humility? The Spirit is working in those ways. And vice versa. Many of us love this great time of worship. I was so blessed by those songs, by the way. We just want to feel God working spiritually in our lives, and we want this experience. So we go to conferences, we go to concerts, and we cry so much, like that's like spiritual fruit or something. And yet the emotion is not guided at all by any sense of the truth. But we love that. It's like break up to make up, right? We just, never mind having a real good relationship. We just love breaking up so we can make up and feel happy again. Well, this is a book I would recommend, and I do want to give resources to you all. I brought my copy if you want to look at it. One thing he talks about here, next piece, is dealing with our shadow sides. What do I mean? Okay, I'm glad you asked. Here's me. Okay, we'll leave it there for a second. I am, according to Myers-Briggs, and you don't have to believe in that, but we'll just say that it's useful, and we'll take it and use what's good about it for the sake of the kingdom of God. Okay, so an ENTJ means that I am an extrovert, I am intuitive, I'm a thinker, and I use my judgment. In other words, I like being around people, certain times. And then I also, I like to solve problems. That's intuition. I like to think about things and kind of analyze them for what they are. And, I have a sense about whether they're good or bad, or going to work out in the end or not. And then I'm a thinker. I love to read. I love ideas. And I use my judgment, meaning my world is organized. I'm a planner. I use Google Calendar. Okay? I have alarms for everything. The other day we went out to a coffee shop and parked in the street, and in Chicago you pay to park everywhere. It's awful. And I forgot to set my alarm for when the parking meter would end. And so I started freaking out because I never forget that. Luckily, no ticket. Okay? So, next slide, please. Here's my shadow side. This is what I want you all to think about in terms of wholeness. There are aspects of me as a person that I often ignore. That's what Dr. Mulholland is getting at. He's a professor of New Testament in Asbury Seminary. There are human needs for introversion. There are times we have to be alone. There are times that I have to address my senses, because that is also part of how God made me. There are aspects of me that need to be emotional. And then there are times when I need to be perceiving, in other words, more spontaneous, instead of always on Google Calendar. But the issue is I have my preferences. They're ENTJ preferences. And yet, as a human, these are aspects of being in God's image that I have to also address. I have to learn how to be alone. It's difficult for me before. I have to learn how to be sensory. So I had my wife, Lynn, help me with this PowerPoint because people need visuals. And I'm not a visual person. See, I'm an N, I'm not an S. I don't need that. I just tell me the idea and I'll understand. I don't need you to show me on a graph. But not everyone is like that. You see where this is going in terms of leadership to the next generation. Feelings. I'm not very emotionally driven, and that's why God made me get married. So I would learn to feel things. Because on my own, it's like, oh, but that's wrong. That doesn't make any sense. It's so obvious. And then also, there are times when we have to be spontaneous and not have everything in our world ordered by a calendar. As leaders, as pastors, this is our shadow side. It's the opposite of our preferences. And many of our young folks, think about how visually or sensorily driven their world is. Doesn't mean you want to buy into the idolatry and perpetuate that. But we need to accept the fact that God made many of us sensory, or visual, or artistic. And when we just say Father, Son, and Holy Bible, it's not that our young folks don't want to believe in the Word. Many of them believe in the Word, and yet they don't know how to connect with God according to who they are. Because all that is in church sometimes is Bible study. They already have class 5 days a week. Read books 8 hours a day. And the same thing with feeling. Many of us, like I grew up in a family, the Contanis men are men. You know? They're tough dudes. They're Visaya, you know? They're your lone wolf. That's really tough. You know? But, you know, for many of us as pastors and as leaders, we need to realize a lot of our young folks are very emotional. They didn't grow up in the same tough streets of, you know, Tondo or wherever. They grew up in the suburbs. And it's encouraged here in the West for them to be expressive and be emotional. And that's important. And for us who are tough guys, it's like, just ask your wife how important that is. We have a shadow side we need to address. Let me say a couple things. Go back one slide, please, to the spiritual. Right now, we have the explosion of many other things that our kids can get into, like yoga. I'm not going to give you a position on yoga. I'll let Pastor Jerry or your pastors do that. There are also something called atheist megachurches. You can Google that if you haven't heard. But all the things that we do in church, atheists also want to do, minus God. In other words, come together, sing songs, do good community service projects, have community, share meals together, encourage each other. And see, because even atheists recognize there are aspects of them that still need to be fed. And yet here we are as a people who are the first fruits of the Spirit. And there was a spiritual gap going on because we're one-dimensional or two-dimensional. That the world can easily duplicate what we're doing. Isn't it? I want you to think about that. Ever heard of Flat Stanley? Flat Stanley is a kid's character, and you just find Flat Stanley all over the place because he's flat, right? Many of us, because of the way we do discipleship, communicate a flat Jesus. It's one-dimensional. It's 1D or 2D. But it doesn't ever come and address your whole person and pop out into 3D or more. I was on the train yesterday, and I heard this. This is so telling of our generation, many young folks. This kid says to another kid, and this is right by the university where I went to undergrad. These 3 kids got on, they started talking to each other, and one of them, who was the smartest in the group, he said, I'm not into documentaries. They tend to be sad or depressing, especially the ones about McDonald's or Chipotle. I just want to laugh. I don't want to know the truth. There's this sense of shallowness. They can put their time and energy, they can feed their minds and their lives with anything. I think many of us have this same kind of approach to the Holy Spirit. If we want to know the Holy Spirit and hear the Word through the voice of the Spirit, it's going to challenge us. It's going to expose us like McDonald's and Chipotle. We're going to see all the things that are not healthy in the world and in our lives. But we don't want that. You say, I'd rather just have fun. I'm all about celebrating the resurrection of Christ, but there is no Easter Sunday without Good Friday. Another kid, I'm not even going to say, but this is a Filipino kid, who was Catholic. A friend of mine asked him, what are you giving up for Lent? And this is actually what the young man said. Porn. Giving up porn for Lent. Now that gentleman claiming to give up porn for Lent was not someone from our church. Okay? Someone we should pray for. But it's this idea, even of Lent, that, okay, no meat on Friday, right? Many of us do our spirituality like this. I can't do this. I can't do that. And because it was Friday yesterday, I went to Chick-fil-A and there's an option for a fish sandwich. Because it's Friday, right? So you're not going to eat chicken. So, the idea was, well, then let's just, do fish and fries and shakes and all this other stuff. It's sense sometimes our spirituality is like this. We tailor it to fit our preferences, rather than letting the Spirit of God address us in the ways that are very uncomfortable, often painful, but necessary. Discipleship is for Christians, people following Jesus, carrying a cross daily. Third gap is the relational. John 15, verses 12 through 17, famous words. This is my commandment, that we love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one in this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends, for all that I have heard from my Father I have made you known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name will give it to you. These things I command you, so that you will love one another. The relational gap. Let me go back to the title slide there. John 19:26 is a very important verse. I have to read it so I don't mess it up, but I think it will have huge implications for us, and it has already for our ministry in Chicago. When Jesus, from the cross, saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour, the disciple took her to his own home. What am I saying? Next slide. The relationship gap is family. The relationship gap is a family. What do we mean? There's this episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air that I love. This is the show that defines my generation. Okay? So even if you don't like it, you have to deal with it, because many of us were raised on this. I was also on The Simpsons, and pretty much it was Chicago Bulls beyond that. Will Smith, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, he's originally from West Philadelphia, right? Philly people here? No? Oh, that's right, it's banned on me. So, Will hasn't seen his father in 14 years because his father left their family. Out of nowhere, his father pops up, visits Will while he's at college, and says, "Listen, I'm sorry that I wasn't there for you. I was young, I wasn't ready." So the father comes back and visits and says, "Let me make it up to you." They hang out for a few days. They go to a carnival. Will experiences having his father around for the first time, and it fills this gap that has been in his life for 14 years. He gets excited, he gets proud to have a father, and he's thinking about how it will be now that his father is there. And then the father says, "Why don't you come on a road trip with me? I'm a driver now, I'm a truck driver, so come with me on a road trip. We'll spend a lot of time together, we'll sing songs, we'll eat out on the road, and it'll be a lot of fun." Will gets all excited, gets ready, and then the morning of, his father says, "Actually, you can't come. I had to pick up an extra shift. I needed another driver. There's no space for you." Will's heartbroken because, again, his father bailed on him. He tried to give his dad a chance. After 14 years, he tried to let his dad fill the gap. Let's make up for lost time, and the father fails him once again. But the story doesn't end there. Uncle Phil, Will's uncle, by marriage. See, it turns out he's the adopted father. And this is a dramatic and powerful scene that is so like the most emotional moment on television that I know of. And Will, his father, walks out, and Will just yells and screams. And then after his anger comes out, he turns to Uncle Phil, his uncle, the father figure, and he says, "Why, he don't want me, man." Every time I see it, I'm like, "Oh, man, why?" But Uncle Phil knows isn't it the same? He's a hug. And they cry together in this moment. And the camera pans over to his statue, the father and the son. And it's this idea that Will's father was never there, but Will, through his uncle, had a father. What am I saying? We're talking about being reparented through mentors. Dr. Peter Childs, my mentor from school, who was supervising me for PhD studies, he's my spiritual father in many ways. Now, don't get me wrong. My father is a man. My mom, she's a woman. They're amazing, godly people. I wouldn't trade them for anything. I just had an hour-long conversation with my mom, and it was 4 o'clock, Ilo time, and we're planning this trip because we're going to go in June and hang out in Boracay and do all these things. And now it's turning into a mission trip because she's going to make me preach. I love my parents. They're awesome. And one of the struggles, this is a two-dimensional thing. So think about this, pastors. We have to recognize, as I know, as a PK, and all the PKs here, the pastor's kids share their parents with the rest of the church. Sometimes it's tough. And we can't mix up those priorities. You have a family God has given you. But yet, the gospel is an adoption story. It's only by the grace of God we're adopted in. None of us earn it by birthright. And so people do need my parents. And they become the second mom and dad to hundreds of people. And that's a good thing. And my parents, as awesome as they are, not perfect. I imagine many of you are awesome parents, but I know you're not perfect. And many of our kids need to be reparented. Not because something went wrong the first time necessarily, but because there are gaps. None of us are perfect. Like I said, I grew up in a family of tough guys, and so when I first had a mentor who could show me what it's like for a man to be open and honest and maybe a little more emotionally outward, I cried a lot. I didn't like to, but I needed to. Many of our young folks need you, leaders, to reparent. But the reverse is also true. Many of us have been hurt by our own kids. We also need to be adopted as parents and grandparents. And this is the thing that I love about our church, even though I'm the lead pastor now when I preach every Sunday. Once we're not in the pulpit, Lola, Mito, Ninons, Ninans, all over, Yindai, Dodo, everywhere. They call me so many things. Anak, they call me Kuya, they call me Pastor, they call me Jay, they call me J-Boy, they call me Kuya, Pastor, J-Boy. They don't know what to call me, but it doesn't matter. Because we have a relationship. So the next slide, we're talking about the pastors and leaders then within the leadership circle, the core, modeling for the rest of the church what intergenerational partnership is. In our church, it happens to be that I'm the lead pastor. And then we have another full-time pastor who's a Korean guy. And then we have a 6'4" Polish guy who's another pastor. And then we have about 8 deacons who are all first-generation baby boomers. And it's a weird mix. But because we love each other, they're sponsors and Ninons and Ninans in our wedding. We're like their adopted children. The rest of the church sees that and says, hey, there's something only possible in Christ going on. This is a book that I would recommend that Hispanic and Asian North Americans group, HANA. We had a conversations in a week-long conference, and it turned into this book